Welcome to the Waterboy and Equipment Manager podcast. My name is Saif Basaria.
And I'm Asad Lalani.
And today, joining us is the writer who covers the Atlanta Hawks for Sports Illustrated, Pat Benson. Welcome to the show, man.
My guys, thank you so much for having me. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I'm psyched.
Appreciate it. Well, before we get started, Pat, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do for the Hawks, what you do for Sports Illustrated, and obviously, where can the listeners find you on the socials?
Yeah, man, you summed it up. I covered the Atlanta Hawks for Sports Illustrated, and before that, I worked at a short stint at Forbes, a little bit of time at Sports Talk ATL, and I wrote a book in the interim, Kobe Bryant sneaker history. So, like everybody listening to this, just a hoops head and a sneaker head, and just enjoying this NBA 75th season. It's been awesome.
Very cool. So, like I said, Pat works exclusively with the Hawks. The biggest thing about Pat when you see him at the stadium or on socials, he's stepping up the game. Okay. When he walks into a stadium, it's similar to when the players walk in. My man is drippied up with a nice little suit on and usually some good sneaker game. I saw you had the Kobe's the other day. Kobe 8s you had on some of the Protros from the re-release over that Mamba week we had a couple of years ago. So what's kind of the idea behind that? What's the method? Why do you take it to another level? I know a lot of your coworkers are not necessarily, you don't got to say names. You got to work with them every day. I don't want to do that to you, but you're stepping up. Well, what's the logic behind that?
Really, man, you just kind of look around, and I look around and see what everybody else is wearing, and then I look at people who I aspire to be like. I see what they're wearing. I'm like, oh man, I gotta step it up. And also, I learned just from my very short stint at Forbes that these positions are rented, not owned. So I'm gonna try to make everything I do legendary. Every single article, every single fit, every single tweet. Like I'm going for 81 in every single thing I do. So for as long as I'm here, I'm going after it.
I love that. So, Pat, tell the listener a little bit about you personally. So, obviously, you are a Hawks fan. You cover the Hawks. Is there another team you go for besides the Atlanta Hawks?
Yeah, man. Actually, my number one's the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yes, it is.
Oh, great. Another Lakers fan for the
That's it.
Listen, we're everywhere, man. You can't dodge us.
We're double teaming you tonight, buddies. Like you, man, I'm of that Kobe generation that he just lit our minds on fire growing up, and he's just our guy. And so grew up in a small city north of Atlanta called Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's right on the border. It's my neighbor's Marjorie Taylor Greene, basically. That's basically that's kind of my clientele up here.
Yeah.
So just growing up being a Lakers fan, just played a little bit of basketball K through 12, and not going pro in that, so I may as well try to cover it, try to write a little bit, try to talk a little bit about it, and man, just really enjoying it.
Well, Pat's kind of underplaying his importance, but we're going to get to a little more about that. Pat's really locked in here with the Atlanta Hawks. And so that's actually what we're going to talk about today, listener. We're going to talk a lot about the Atlanta Hawks. Hopefully you'll enjoy that conversation. And then obviously Pat is a basketball head outside of Atlanta. So we're going to talk a little bit about the general NBA. And then Pat will tell you a little bit about his book, which is very, very cool. It's the sneaker history of Kobe Bryant, which is obviously, as a listener, you've been listening for a long time. That means a lot to me. I'm sure Asad obviously is fascinated by the topic as a whole. Pat did write this book in 2020. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about the book, and we're going to do a little bit of that. So let's get started, Asad, man. Let's jump into it. Let's talk a little bit Atlanta basketball. The Hawks, obviously, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals against the Milwaukee Bucks last year. Some would call it a fluke. Some would call it a long time coming. So Asad and I kind of think somewhere in between, right? Some things had to play out right. And then obviously the team did belong to be in that conversation maybe a year or two early. However, the NBA season for the Hawks this season following that performance has been not the best, to say the least. So talk to me a little bit about what led to the rocky start, why it played out that way, and then what changed. They look a lot better now in the second half of the NBA season. Obviously, they're still fighting for a playoff spot, but they look a lot better than before.
No doubt. No, I think your diagnosis that was perfect. That last year was a little bit of luck, a little bit of hard work. Everything kind of came together at the right time, I think, and it just the stars aligned last year, and it was perhaps a year or two ahead of schedule. So coming into this season, Definitely some players still banged up and historically short turnaround because, their season ended in early July and they're back at it on the normal calendar. So players still banged up. And I think there was some complacency, to be honest. Even Trae Young said, like in October, November, he's like, guys, regular season games, it's a little boring compared to playoffs. But which I get, but this team's too young to be complacent, and they struggled, And then obviously COVID hit everybody, but especially the Hawks. And then over the past few weeks, they've been playing better. They're back in the play-in picture. And I think right now the goal is just to be healthy and to be playing well by the time the postseason rolls around, and just taking one game at a time. That seems to be the general consensus around this team.
So funny enough, the follow-up question was talking about Trey's the regular season is boring comments.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was taken by many fans and national media as a negative connotation. I think personally, the takeaway was more, hey, the playoffs were really, really, really fun. And to get back to it is the goal, but we got to go through this logjam of 82 games in order to get there. Now, how do you think that mentality, that comment actually reflected on the team as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what I love about Trae is he is the most candid athlete ever to interview him. Like, he will talk to you about anything, like, nothing's off limits, which is really incredible for any current athlete. And I think he was a slip. I think what came out was what they were honestly thinking was like, let's get through this. Let's just get our playoff seeding, and then we'll flip the switch. But what I've been telling everybody is, man, this isn't the 2001, 2002 LA Lakers. They can't flip the switch like that. Like, come on, guys, you haven't won anything. And, but yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, I think the goal is just to be healthy and get right for the postseason. But yeah, I think even Clint Capella a couple of weeks ago had some comments like, yeah, I knew we were going to struggle on defense, blah, blah, blah. So it seems to be the general consensus around this team. Maybe they're wise beyond their years. I'm not sure. We'll find out here in a few weeks, though.
Yeah, definitely. I think you bring up two really good points and two specific words that I want to mention: complacency and consistency. Right.
Yeah.
So, obviously they came in when Trae made those comments and everyone was like, you're 23, 24 years old. You haven't really accomplished anything in the league to be able to have that kind of mentality. But then also, every team was hit by COVID. And at the point, the Hawks were down, 15 players due to COVID, I mean,
basically the whole roster.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a list out there of the teams most hit by COVID, and I'm pretty sure the Hawks are ranked either 1 or 2 on that list. So us more than others were definitely affected by that. And because of their defensive struggles and then not having a consistent roster to even try to attempt to fix that, maybe dug the Hawks into a little bit of a deeper hole than, they were coming into the season, coming off that run.
Yeah, absolutely. It really exacerbated the problems. And one thing that, I didn't want to complain about, but it's something that you hear a lot is they should have had some games delayed. Mm-hmm. Other teams had games delayed. No team signed as many 10-day players as the Hawks did. So that's definitely a sore spot with the Hawks and their fan base. They feel like they should have had some games delayed and bought them a little bit of time.
Hawks Reddit was in a frenzy about the game delayed or lack thereof. Obviously, I'm sure you're a frequent scroller of Hawks Reddit. It's just good to know where the temperature is at in Hawks land. Well, Asad, go ahead. You want to talk about the postseason?
Yeah. So for kind of coming off that run from last season and kind of going into this season, what do you think is the Hawks, like their ceiling? What would you think they would consider a success versus a failure, and what they want to accomplish for the rest of the season?
I don't know. I can't really speak on their behalf, but for me, I think the goal going into the season was probably another return to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think now it's probably second round, I think would be the ceiling realistically for this team. But honestly, it's going to be a challenge getting out of that play-in, because right now the Brooklyn Nets are back there, lurking around. So it's got me shaking in my boots, and I'm not even playing.
I think for the Hawks, it was a gift and a curse last year, right? Going to the Eastern Conference Finals, the majority of this team is under 24 years of age or 25 years of age. And so that taste of success now becomes the drug that you want again, right? For the Atlanta Hawks, you're right. The success is going to the finals or going to the Eastern Conference Finals again, which I think we've learned the East is a lot stronger this year than it was last year. And so it seems as though they're almost, in a poetic way, they're destined for failure unless they end up in the finals or the Eastern Conference Finals.
That really is poetic. That's really true. And the sad thing is that a lot of the teams, not only is the Eastern Conference better this year, the Miami Heat got better, so much better. The Chicago Bulls got so much better in the offseason, but then a few of the teams ahead of them got better at the trade deadline.
Mm-hmm.
And Philadelphia and Brooklyn both made some moves that I think will eventually pay off. So it is set up for failure. And people forget about the rule changes which Trae Young's had to adapt to. And I think he's done a great job of that. So the deck was stacked against them. The short off season. I'm afraid when it's all said and done for the season that we're going to look back and say, man, they didn't really have much of a chance at doing that again.
It seems like there was a lot of missed opportunities as well. You talked about COVID and the quick turnaround, or lack thereof moves in the offseason and the trade deadline. It seems like there was a lot. So we wanted to talk about when Cam Reddish got traded to New York, right? That was a really big deal, at least for us at the time. We were actually really anti that. We liked Cam. We thought a lot of Cam, and I still do. I think he's a great guy and a good basketball player, or at least the potential to be one. However, a lot came out about Cam after he left. Somewhat negative, but not even just negative, just a lot that we didn't know about, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be a negative thing. What was Cam viewed in the locker room? Why have the Hawks looked better since his departure? What's kind of changed here?
Apparently he was ready to move on. He wanted something better. According to the reporting from Chris Kirschner of The Athletic, he was wanting a contract extension. He was wanting more playing time. And Travis Schlenk said, thanks for coming to me privately, not making a big fuss about this in the media. We will shop you around until we find the right deal. And apparently found the right deal for the Hawks, but wow, was it not the right deal for Cam Reddish's career? Oh my God, he is languishing in New York right now.
It's gotten worse for him, I think, right? With playing time and opportunity.
I would be worried. Like if I were him, I'd be like, man, what have I done to my career? I'd be really worried. And then the team immediately picked up once he left. So I don't know what was going on in the locker room. I know that for as much as his offense has improved this season, his consistency, his defense had gotten markedly worse. So I think he was checking in, checking out, and which was one thing this team really couldn't have. And best of luck to Cam. I really like y'all. I liked Cam as well. And I think we still could miss him come the playoffs, because remember, man, he showed out last year in the playoffs, and I think it's good to have a 6'8" super switchable forward. You can just throw at somebody off the bench. And I love Kevin Knox, but I don't think he's seeing any playing time in the playoffs.
Very, very rare. And especially with Cam, I mean, in this league, you can never have enough wings. And, that was one of the bonuses of the Hawks that, we both Safe and I, and, all of us on the podcast really liked about the Hawks is we were a deep team and we had that plethora of wings. It's a rare thing. Doesn't happen in our league. Cam played 17 minutes tonight against the Sixers. So they're slowly rolling him into the rotation. But at the same time, I still get the feeling that Tom Thibodeau is not really a fan of Cam. I mean, I don't know if Tom even really wanted him there. It was maybe more of a management decision, more so than Tom. So the Knicks should definitely play him, because they could use what Cam can do on the court, both offensively and defensively for sure, to get that Knicks team kind of back to where they were last season.
You're exactly right. And I think he could provide a lot of energy, even if it's coming off the bench. Last I saw, they had one of the worst offensive ratings in the league. They play at a slow pace. And, it just seems like everybody in that organization is so unhappy, from, Julius Randle on down. So, I think why not throw Cam Reddish out there, especially right now they're looking outside at the play-in. I think now's the time for him to be an X factor for the team. I still, believe Cam Reddish has, I don't know about like all-star capabilities, but I think he can have a long career ahead of him if he finds the right situation.
Yeah, I mean, we remember last year, the biggest thing with Cam was like, we could deploy him for 10 minutes on the other team's best player, just 10, 12 minutes of a decent quality defender who just has energy and tries is big in the NBA.
Yeah. It's interesting. And especially speaking of the Knicks, I mean, obviously last year's first round series was quite entertaining. I mean, we hear it now every time Trey goes, not even when Trey's in New York, there are random concerts where they'll be chanting "fuck Trey Young." So clearly Trey Young owns New York. So
by the way, before you continue, Asa, I think that is such a win for the city of Atlanta and Trey Young. Is it not? We've not had an athlete, especially on the Atlanta Hawks, ever that has this level of influence. We've not ever had an Atlanta Hawk athlete have their own shoe, for example, which I know you're Pat, you're a really big fan of the new tie-dye ones that he just he wore last night or 2 nights ago. But that in itself is really cool. They're at a concert talking about Trey Young. Trey Young's not even near your zip code. That's the level of rent free, and rent is expensive in New York. So I'm sure Trey is very happy.
Like, building off of what both of you just said, it's bizarre, their obsession with Trey Young. It's unhealthy, and I mean, it's good promotion. It's free publicity for Trey Young and for the Hawks, and it makes all of us look good, and I think it makes them look like the crazy ex-boyfriend or something. I don't know, but I've never seen this kind of weirdo obsession. It's like they played one series and it was 4-1, and
it wasn't as close as it sounds. It wasn't as great a series as they made it out to be.
Yeah, I guess for the Knicks though, that's legendary. Just making it to the playoffs.
Fair enough. Hey, look, for Atlanta, it was legendary. I don't know your relationship with Trey Young and how often you get to speak with him. Did you ever get to talk to him about the WWE appearance at Madison Square Garden over the summer?
I didn't. I remember the first time I spoke to him after that was Media Day in September. And I didn't. I was asking him about some other stuff, but I did ask Lou Williams what he thought. And Lou Williams said that he didn't think his wrestling was very believable or realistic. And I thought that was the funniest thing ever. He's like, no, I don't think he's a good wrestler at all.
Fair enough.
So that was hilarious. But
good thing he didn't go pro in wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think I should have asked him about that. I guess by that time, it had been a couple weeks. I think that was in August when that happened. But yeah, that should have. But also, it was like only my second media day, so I was like super nervous.
Yeah. Obviously, the Knicks and the Hawks always have a fun matchup, and there's kind of sort of become maybe one of those teams where the Hawks will play a little extra harder against knowing that history. Pat, do you think that the Hawks have any other rival teams in the league, or are there any other certain teams when they play against, they play with a little bit more extra energy or effort? Like, we really want to beat these guys. We really want to show them up.
Yeah, obviously the Knicks would have to be number one right now. They do have a deep history with the Boston Celtics dating back to the Dominique Wilkins days. And then
ISO Joe, you remember that?
You're right.
ISO Joe days. Those are obviously right. Dominique and all, but I wasn't around for that. The ISO Joe days with the Boston Celtics was big.
That's when I first became an NBA fan. I still have a poster of Joe Johnson in my room in Atlanta. It's still there.
When he dropped Paul Pierce. I think that's how I remember it. It might be a little bit nicer than I think, but it was really cool. The Boston Celtics being one, yes.
Yeah, so I'd say they're number two, and then number three, I guess the interdivision rivalry with the Miami Heat. The Heat have owned the Southeast Division, but again, I'm not really a Hawks historian like y'all. I'm a Lakers fan, but so I'm catching on kind of late. But those would be my top three teams. Who am I missing? Is there anybody else in the Eastern Conference? I'm trying to think.
I think so. One thing that stuck out to me last night, and this could just be, I guess, recency bias.
Yeah.
Why do we hate the Raptors? What's up with I guess the fan base, Hawks Twitter, Hawks Reddit was really up in arms about the Raptors. What's up with that? Do you have any idea what they're talking about? Because I'm clearly out of touch on the Raptors.
It's funny. I wouldn't have known if you hadn't brought it up, but I think there was something with Twitter Spaces. And,
so it's fairly recent, like drama, online stuff.
I think so. I think it's some online stuff. I don't think it's anything between the two squads or the two organizations because, Canadians are friendly, and
I was like, I like the Raptors team. Actually, they have a bunch of really fun players.
Yeah. I think there's some beef between some people on Twitter, but
fair enough.
But, anybody wants to get the smoke can get it. Apparently.
That's fair. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Hawks, and then I want to talk about some NBA stuff because obviously, besides the Hawks, you get to watch every other team that comes to Atlanta, which is like every team in the NBA. So one thing we saw the other day was the Hawks TV ratings are actually the 8th worst in the NBA. Now, I live in Atlanta. I do not have Bally Sports. I have to watch the Hawks in not the most Hawks friendly way. Right. Exactly. Would be the best way for me to say that. Us obviously lives in Houston, so we do have League Pass. He gets to watch on League Pass. Why do you think the Hawks have low TV ratings or support in that regard?
Well, there's that issue with Bally,
With
no
Bally.
doubt. And then I did see where some people online were saying, yeah, right now this season it's been disappointing, and I get it.
That's fair.
This team has not only blown some leads, but their record against the spread when they're favored to win, they've dropped a lot of games. So I think that is a component, both the actual like technology and then the team component of it as well.
I still think they play fun basketball, but I could be biased. Maybe I'm missing out, right? But you're right. The Bally Sports thing is an absolute travesty, and I wonder how much, if at all, that affects some decision making going into the next TV contract or whenever that may be. I don't even know when that is, honestly. But Bally sucks.
Big time, man. They had some real technical issues early in the season. Like, luckily I've got access to it, but
I wonder why, Mr. Pat. I wonder why you have access to the Hawks game.
No, I think it's just because like where I live, like I live in Atlanta. Like, me and MTG, when we're watching it and we're lifting weights together. I think I noticed like lots of technical issue, which is sad because they have such a great broadcast team with Bob Rathbun and Dominique.
Those are the OG guys. They've been around since the South. What is it? Fox Sports Southeast and South days, right? And then that became Bally, and then they took it away from everybody.
Yeah,
or most everybody.
And I don't know if y'all have met them before, but they are legit the nicest dudes ever in the world. Like Dominique, obviously OG legend. Like he doesn't walk, he floats like around State Farm Arena is the best way I could describe it. And then Bob, he's like a Beatle, an A-list celebrity. Like he's my guy. Like whenever like he talks to me, I'm like, Bob Rathbun came and talked to me. And I think I just think he hung the moon. I love Bob.
Bob has been doing it for, I think, probably as long as I've been watching the Hawks on TV and listening, like paying attention to audio. And so whenever I've seen him in person, his voice like just doesn't calculate, right? Because I'm used to hearing the voice, and it's a very for me, a very iconic voice, right?
Yes.
I'm sure for many Atlanta Hawks fans or sports fans, it is an iconic voice. And then to see him in person, you're like, you're not supposed to be a real person. I just hear the voice. And so obviously Dominique is very different than that. He's a legend of the game. And so he gets much more than the voice. But Bob is like, you know the voice immediately. It's so recognizable for Hawks fans.
No doubt. No, I love them. They deserve nothing but the finer things in life.
He's been on Bally Sports or the Hawks broadcast since 1996. So that's when I was born. So
I didn't know that. That's forever. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, I don't know another voice for the Hawks in that case.
Right.
Very cool.
No, that's
Damn,
crazy.
that's
and you know what's awesome is he'll go and do college hoops and like and all these different speaking engagements. Like he really is on the move.
I assumed as much. Before we get into NBA stuff, us and I were talking the other day. And what we wanted to do was we're like, look, I bet you Pat has some stories that he's not written in the past, right? About, look, Trae Young is the face of the team. He's the most exciting player. He's the future of the franchise. But there's other guys. We got 14, and this year, more than 14 other guys on the roster. I was just counting it for fun. We've had 12 guys start 5 games or more for us this NBA season, which is ridiculous. But that also means, Pat, you get to hear and see a lot of different things that aren't just Trae Young related. What's some of the more interesting things that you've noticed or you've seen or stories you've heard? And this is kind of opening you up to whatever you want to talk about. But tell us about the other guys on the team that we want to hear about.
I think there's one story I've been wanting to write for a long time. I don't know if it's going to happen, especially in like this past week with like the recent world events going on. But everybody should go back and look at the history of Bogdan Bogdanovic's family and like what they had to do. And like it's either his dad or his granddad was a politician in that part of the world, faced incredible scrutiny, and it was like a really great guy. But I mean, like he went through it. I mean, he really went through it. And I was like about ready to like work up the courage to reach out so anybody listening can have this IP. But I was about to open up, hit up their organization, but hey, can I get like some time to talk about this? And like, sure enough, everything in like Russia and Ukraine happened this week. And I know he's from Serbia and everything, but I was like, I don't know if if or when I'll ever be able to write that story now. So that's something I definitely am super interested in. I've been like kicking around that idea for months. And then second is just how funny Gorgie Jang is.
Oh,
I love Gorgie Jang.
Yeah, dude, he's the funniest dude in the world. Like whenever I'm down there listening to him, constantly talking smack to like everybody, anybody can get the smoke. It's so funny. Like it's all like lighthearted and in like a good like nature. He's just one of those guys. Like he's just want to like trash talk you. And like listening to him trash talk every single person who like walks within a 15-foot radius of him cracks me up. It's one of my favorite pregame rituals. Like I always keep my ear to the ground with him.
Oh, that's cool. See, like there's certain guys, obviously us and I, as big fans of the Hawks and just basketball, we don't get to have the access that you've had in the last year or so. And so like these little tidbits, like Gorgie Zhang, obviously decent basketball player, right? But it's like, what is it that made the Hawks want him and bring him in? Why was he different from the Deadmans of the world or other guys who have served a similar role for the Hawks in the last few years? Locker room guy, clearly someone that people just seem to like and get around. The gravity is there. It's good energy. And see, that's not something I would know otherwise. So it's like, why Gorgie Zhang? Because he's clearly just a really good dude to be around, which is really nice to hear.
No doubt, no doubt. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I might just try to empty the clip and see if there's anything else.
Well, I'm going to throw some things at you and let's see if we can jog your memory. Does Kevin Huerter, does he prefer to be called Red Velvet or Kayvon?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think Kayvon has usurped Red Velvet as the more popular nickname. I don't know which one he prefers, but it seems like Kayvon has really risen and taken off since last year's playoffs. But those are two. Like, what player has two dope nicknames?
Those are good nicknames. They are really good nicknames.
That's rare.
Do you know the origins of Kayvon?
Yeah, they said when he plays a certain way, he's called Kayvon.
I wanted to know how far you were willing to go to explain Kayvon.
Yeah, however you want to take that, you can take that.
So for non-Hawks fans or people who are listening to the podcast and not very familiar with the whole Kayvon moniker, it was given to him, but if I'm not mistaken, by Taurean Prince and another player on the Hawks. I cannot remember for the life of me, but basically it's when he plays really well, he gets to be Kayvon, and otherwise he is now Kevin. Let your imagination do the rest of that talking, listener. I'm sure you get where we're coming from, especially if you're watching on the video. You kind of get where I'm going here, and I'm going to leave it just at that. Talk to me about a little bit about Gallo. So obviously when we signed Gallo, he was, at the time, there was a lot of John Collins discussion, right? Will he get paid? Won't he get paid? Does he have a future with the Hawks? Could he potentially get traded? That's another question that's lingered on well past the signing of Gallo. But when Gallo was brought in, it was seen by many fans as John Collins' insurance almost. It's if we lose Collins, if we trade Collins, we have Gallinari. Obviously, and I think thankfully that's not happened. We've had both, and they've both had really great moments for us. How does Gallo fit into the locker room? Where does he see himself maybe in the next 1 or 2 years? What have you kind of seen from Gallinari since arriving in Atlanta?
Like the rest of them, he's beloved in the locker room. Like this really is a tight-knit group. No bad apples at all in the locker room, which is really cool, which is why we love him. I think he was brought in, like you said, which was really smart. John Collins insurance, but also they really wanted to load this team up with shooters, and man, they've done it. I mean, they're one of the best, one of the better 3-point shooting teams in the league, and he certainly helps that, and he provides a lot of punch off the bench. Not much defense, unfortunately, but like we saw the other night in Chicago, man, he can still light you up if you're not careful. And that's what this team could definitely, their second unit could definitely use it. And circling back around, now he's back on the first unit because John Collins is injured.
He's out right now. Yeah. With Lou Williams, obviously he's kind of in and out of the rotation, or more in and out of playing legitimate minutes for the Hawks. However, when he arrived in Atlanta from the Clippers, it was not a guarantee that he would play for the Hawks. There was some talk of, maybe he'll retire. Maybe he's just done. Maybe he doesn't want to be here. And he's he's obviously a hometown hero. A lot of Hawks fans very familiar with Lou Williams' upbringing, but he's stuck around and he's been here for now, a year and a half, 2 years. What's kind of his influence as one of the, I mean this in the nicest, most endearing way, an old head who's done it, a lot of it in the NBA versus, like I said, a lot of this team is 25 and younger. Lou Williams is well older than them and has seen a lot more than them. What's kind of his role with the team? And obviously, do they make fun of him for being old, or does he kind of just fit in with the guys?
Yeah, I think yes to all of the above. And Trey Young called, he said, that he was his favorite OG. Trey Young really likes him because I was thinking, I was anticipating a lot of moves at the trade deadline.
I think we all were.
And I wasn't, I was like, Gallo with that contract, he could easily be moved. Lou Williams is an expiring contract. I know he had that trade veto clause, but like he could easily be moved if he agreed to it. But Trey Young really likes Lou Williams. I mean, he's gone out and said that a few times. So, and as you can tell from interviews, he's just a cool, easygoing dude with just he's forgotten more basketball than we know because he's been in the NBA for so long. So yeah, I think he brings that, and he can still give you some buckets every now and then when he's healthy and everything else.
What is there any plans? I think I've heard this rumor floated around a little bit. I don't know if you guys have had that this may be his last year in the league, and maybe after the end of the season he may call it and retire. Have you heard anything about that, or is there any truth to that?
Yeah, in an interview with Taylor Rooks of Bleacher Report.
We love Taylor.
Yeah, I know, she's so cool.
She's the best. She's awesome.
She is. And then he said like this year is probably going to be it, and it would make sense. Like y'all, so he's a hometown guy. I believe he's 35 years old. He's been in the league since he was 17. So it's now wouldn't be the worst scenario for him to do. He's got a young family. So yeah, I could see this being it. This could definitely be his final hurrah.
Yeah. We've watched Lou give buckets, that patented fading into the jump shot, for many teams, many big moments. Kind of transitioning now into, the league wide, as you said, you're a Lakers fan. Mm-hmm. I guess we'll get this out of the way first.
Also, I don't want to talk about the Lakers today. Okay.
We have to. We have to.
We really don't.
I have to throw in one question. So
I know. Whatever. Have your fun.
Hey, you torture me enough. Okay. Maybe this is my time to give it back.
I do torture you.
Obviously the Lakers have struggled this season, injuries, inconsistency defensively. The Russell Westbrook experiment has gone maybe not so well as maybe we had thought. So, what are your thoughts on the season? Where do you see the Lakers going for the next 20, 25 games? And, what's your expectation of the team going forward?
Oh man, it's been a disaster. This has been just a terrible season for Lakers fans. I remember it was draft night when that trade went down, and my dad's a big time Lakers fan. And like, we went out there like, are we happy about this? Is this a good move?
I had the exact same reaction. I was like, I don't know how I feel about it. I think the only thing that sold me was when LeBron and AD were like, yeah, we signed off on this. Yeah. Then I'm like, all right, then who the hell am I? I trust you. Let's do it. I was wrong, but I trusted them.
Exactly. And then what followed that was like a series. They brought back like every player you wanted from NBA 2K12, like Carmelo, Trevor Ariza, Rajon Rondo, everybody. And Dwight Howard, they brought Dwight Howard back. So yeah, I mean, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but it's making high school Pat go crazy. I'm loving this. So, high school college Pat. And but yeah, I don't know. Injuries obviously have devastated this team. I saw where AD, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's out another 4 or 5 weeks.
Looks like it. Looks like
a mid-foot sprain, which that's basically going to perhaps do them in. And then LeBron, being LeBron, flirting with Cleveland again. He's already thinking about leaving. And this is the big divide, like the big chasm for the Lakers is like, a lot of us are still loyal to Kobe, and we just see LeBron as like a new guy who played a very influential role in helping, bringing us back. And he buoyed the organization through the loss of Kobe, and he's done so much for us. But at the end of the day, we kind of know he's, here for a good time, not a long time. Mm-hmm. So, I really didn't like the comments he made around the All-Star weekend about like, yeah, I could see myself coming back to Cleveland, or I want to play with my son, or that sort of thing. And that just seems like to me like classic LeBron. So
it's very interesting. I feel very differently. I think with LeBron, at first I was similar. I think I had a very similar perspective as you did, but I think over the last maybe 12 or 18 months, I've grown to just be forever grateful to him, because if
Yeah.
you remember, the Lakers were a shit show, and had it not for LeBron and
Yeah.
obviously Magic and Pelinka bringing LeBron in, and then
Yeah.
eventually Anthony Davis,
Yeah.
forget 2020, we would probably still be lottery fodder or damn close, right? We had guys like Lonzo and Ingram and Kuzma and Hart, and those guys are really fun to play. But LeBron and Anthony Davis, I wouldn't trade those
I agree.
2-3 years for anything. It brought us back to relevancy, which was a pipe dream, for lack of a better word, for like 6 years, right? Since like 2015 when Kobe retired, it was impossible to even imagine the end of the road.
One championship is worth it to me. With
Without
the
a doubt.
Lakers, like everything we're going through now, the big AD trade, one championship's worth it, just because as Lakers fans, you and I are spoiled.
That's
Like,
exactly where I was going.
we're
Yeah.
we're just used to it. But like the Hawks organization hasn't won a championship since 1958. And like the Timberwolves and like the Kings, and you look at these teams that just never win anything, and we're just spoiled rotten compared to them. So yeah, I mean, realistically, one championship's worth it.
Absolutely, it is. It gives you it, like you said, we're spoiled, right? It's like for us, we wanted LeBron and Anthony Davis, that 3, 4, 5 year, however
Yeah.
long that run was going to be. We wanted to be multiple successes,
Mhm.
and it's like I think after really this season, the way it's gone, I went, it was worth it. It was absolutely worth it. Look, AD with the injuries, fantastic basketball player, fantastic
Mhm.
dude. The injuries suck, and they suck a
Yeah.
lot. And it's insane that like 2 or 3 years ago, there were conversations, Anthony Davis and Giannis. That was a conversation
Cool.
NBA media had 2 or 3 years ago. Now,
Mhm.
obviously, we're not having that conversation or anything
Yeah.
close. But like that's the level of player that is available on any given night, which is really, really cool. And LeBron obviously being one of the greatest of all time. Those are Lakers for life now, right? Yeah, they're
Mhm.
almost like hired guns or mercenaries in
Yeah,
a
that's
way,
it.
but they'll be Lakers for life. And I think that really solidified itself, like you said, after the loss of Kobe. If we didn't
Yeah.
have a LeBron, if we didn't have AD, and the team that we had, Quinn Cook being one of those guys,
Yeah.
having those guys on the team, I wouldn't say made it easier, but it made it more okay to just
Yeah.
feel what you feel.
Oh man, like you said, I give him a rough time, but we are forever indebted to him for bringing us back to relevancy and then getting the organization through the biggest crisis ever.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Ever, yeah,
Without a
ever.
doubt.
This is way worse than Magic's announcement, and I'm trying to think of it. There's been everything. I know. Yeah, this is it.
I
It
mean,
doesn't
yeah,
get
like
any worse
this
than
is
that.
bigger. It was bigger than basketball, right? So like I think
Yeah,
that all the crises that just came to mind while you were thinking were
yeah,
basketball, and this was
yeah,
so
yeah,
much bigger, right? It's like, oh yeah,
exactly.
we sucked for 6 years, but we lost Kobe.
Eh,
That's much bigger than any basketball thing that you and I or anybody could ever come with.
and I'm
Magic
always
is
only
probably the closest thing. You're right.
and I'm always going to give LeBron a tough time because all transparency. Like I was a LeBron hater
I
before he
was
came
too.
to
I'm
the
with
league.
you. I'm with you.
Okay,
I'm
cool.
with you. You know what it was is I really didn't like LeBron for like a long time.
Mhm.
And then I think right around the end of Miami and the beginning of Cleveland, his second stint in Cleveland, I started to ask myself why I dislike LeBron.
Mhm.
And I kept coming to what I felt were an unfair off
Yeah,
basketball court responses, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
On the court, he was and is and will always probably be incredible.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what we're not going to do, or me, right? And I'm
Yeah,
talking to
yeah,
myself. The
yeah,
we
yeah,
is
yeah.
me. I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what we're not going to do is we're not going to wait until a guy ends his career to give him his roses. Because Kobe, a lot of that happened with Kobe, right? We saw it in
Big time.
2014 to 15 when Kobe almost became a different guy, right? He was trying to
Yeah.
enjoy the moment. He was a lot more soft, right?
Mhm.
He was like a teddy bear that everyone wanted to hang out with and sign his jersey and just talk to and talk about. That's not the Kobe that we knew for the previous 18 or 19 years prior,
No.
right? And so it's like, you know what? He got his flowers, but it was kind of late. It wasn't too late, which is great, but it
Yeah,
was
true,
kind of
true.
late. And so I was like,
It
I'm not
was.
doing that with LeBron. I'm not doing that with the greats of the game anymore because we only have them for so long. And then they could just be gone forever, or they could just not be playing basketball anymore. And then we'll have missed them, except for James Harden. That's like, fuck you.
It's really interesting that you guys kind of feel that way about LeBron
Yeah.
because I growing up, so I got kind of into basketball when I was about 12 years old in 2008.
Yeah.
And the way you guys feel about LeBron, I felt about Kobe. When I came into the
Really?
league, yeah, I mean, Kobe was a villain of sorts, right?
Yeah,
Of course he
true,
was.
true.
Of course
Yeah,
he was.
I mean, if you weren't like a fan of the Lakers or around that, to me, coming from Atlanta, coming from the East, I don't know. Even though LeBron was there, I felt that way about Kobe. It was like, oh, I'm not a fan. Yeah, he's a really good basketball player, but like all the antics, all the shit talk, like the Mamba mentality, whatever. It wasn't until that I got older, where I got into kind of 2014, 2015, where I truly realized, the values that kind of surround Kobe and his persona, both on the court and off the court. And then obviously the tragedy that happened. I know for you guys it was arguably one of the worst days of your lives. And when I heard it on the news, it obviously I first thought it was a joke. It did not take it seriously.
Of course, yeah.
And then as I just thought about it, it impacted me so deeply, and it kind of surprised me to an extent too. Is like, like why am I so shook by this? Like I was not a fan of him like for that long. But it's just the transcendence that Kobe had on the game of basketball and being just a basketball fan, which is what made it so difficult. And like you said, it's a life lesson that you don't know. Basketball is great, it's important, but sometimes it's not as big as life, and think these things can happen, and you should never take any moment, any opportunity for granted, because everything can change in a second. So
amen to that. I totally agree.
So for that, I think it's crazy kind of looking at it now and looking at how we have somewhat similar views of both Kobe and LeBron, yet here we are today and idolizing them both, but in different ways.
Yeah. Well, listener, I'm sure that there's other players that you may like or dislike. Pat, let's kind of loosen the mood up a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about, obviously, besides the Hawks, you get to watch every home game, and I'm sure many away games as well. What are some of the teams or players that have stuck out to you this season where you're like, whoa, this guy has been really good, or this team is just on a different level than I've seen them in the past?
Player-wise, my favorite non-Lakers player, it's non-Hawks player, because like I love these dudes. Like I've gotten like so close to him, but like LaMelo Ball. I mean, that guy is a treat. I hope everybody understands like what he brings to the game, the excitement, the flair. That kid is a superstar, and he's must-see TV for me. When the Hawks aren't on and the Hornets are on, like I'm making time to see that. Like I'm going to follow his career very closely. Like I'm buying all the stock, all the NFTs, all the shoes, everything. I'm all in on LaMelo Ball. What about y'all? I want to hear y'all.
You like those Pumas? You're a big fan of the LaMelos?
They're god ugly.
Yeah, come on.
God awful. Like my girl was like, no, you can't.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the shoe. Hopefully the second iteration will be better, because I agree LaMelo as a player is ridiculous. He's out of a video game. There's some guys where you're just like, this doesn't make any sense what you're doing. He's similar to like Ja Morant, for example. Again, another player who's just out of a video game. These guys, this cannot be real life in the way that they play basketball. And by the way, how young they are and how easy the game comes to them is just, it's so cool to me.
He plays with like the same flair as like White Chocolate, Jason Williams.
Okay.
And I kind of see shades of him. And there was this one like goofy play he had back in November where he tried like bouncing the ball off the rim, alley-ooping it to himself, and it went terrible. And like the coach pulled him out. Like it was just a mess.
But
like,
he tried it.
That's it. He tried it. And I just want all of us to be that fearless in life. And for like an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid, whatever he is, to do that, man, there's lessons to be learned. I thought that was dope. I think it was cooler that he didn't make it and he was willing to try it.
It's like shades of young Kobe. That's really what it is, right? That's the parallels you're drawing without necessarily literally drawing them, right? It's just there. It's like, oh, Kobe airballed and then he airballed again, and then he was like, fuck it, I'll shoot it again, because that's who he was. And LaMelo, similarly fearless to do such a thing. Ja Morant trying to jump over Kevin Love a year ago, where it's like, this guy's 6'8", 6'9", what are you doing? How do you think that that's even possible for another human being to do? And then he almost did. He literally almost did. That's ridiculous. One of the great what ifs of basketball, isn't it?
It is. Or I gotta hear from our Houston fan on who he's keeping up with. Y'all got a lot of young players out there.
Yeah, the Rockets team, obviously they're not going to be as successful this year, but the pieces are there. Both Safe and I are huge fans of Alperen Şengün.
I do like Alperen.
We see all the talent in him in the world. A lot of some of the blue collar guys in Houston that I'm a really big fan of. Jayshawn Tate Garrison Matthews, Josh Christopher. These guys play really, really hard, especially on the defensive end. And I'm a big defense guy. Everyone loves the offense, everyone loves the excitement, but I like the kind of the nitty gritty, the toughness.
You like Thibodeau.
Yeah.
Funny enough, Usad is not a big Thibodeau guy like that.
Oh man.
I'm sure he's a great guy, but
yeah,
I don't know. In regards to Houston, a guy who defensively I was really excited to see, but has not played the NBA season was Usman Garuba. That was a guy I was very, very excited. I mean, the guy's supposed to be like a legitimate lockdown defender. And unfortunately, he's not played this NBA season. But talk to me a little bit about, obviously, you've seen the Chicago Bulls. You've seen Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Really, really good. You've seen Giannis and Middleton, who turns into prime Kobe every time he comes to State Farm Arena in Atlanta, which is just absurd to me. You've seen the Cavs with Evan Mobley, Rookie of the Year potentially, and Darius Garland. Who of those guys have really stuck out to you in the East? Because obviously you see those guys more often than the Western Conference dudes.
One quick addendum. Campazzo from the Denver Nuggets. His nickname's Magician. That another dope nickname, and he plays with so much spice and so much sauce. I had to throw that back in.
So funny enough, one of our co-hosts, Kays, who's not here today, Facundo Campazzo, I believe his rookie year also was last year.
He's like 30 years old.
And he was like 30. And Caves was like, yo, keep an eye on this dude. He's got like ridiculous handles. This is really what he's known for. Handles. Yeah. And he's a pest on defense. Even though he's quite small, he's very pesky on defense. And I was like, who the hell? And we watch him. We're like, you know what? Like there's clearly a style like of a lot of European players who come from the Euro League and such. They have a very similar something about them, right? And Campazzo is very much like move the ball around, just keep it going. A lot of physical, a lot of aggression on the defensive side. And you see that he's very much Euroball personified, which is really cool.
That's it. All right. I'm so glad y'all know who he is.
Yeah, of course we do. Come on, we're a basketball podcast, Pat. We have to know these guys.
You're right. All right.
Also, just Garrison Matthews. That's what we just talked about.
You're right. That's a deep
call him Gary Bird.
That I actually didn't know. That's news to me.
I'm sorry, what was the question before?
You're good. So we're talking about some of the Eastern Conference, the big guys, the Miamis, the Chicagos, the Phillies, the Clevelands. Who have been some of the guys that have really stuck out to you this NBA season? Obviously, LaMelo being one of them. But like Embiid, one of the MVP favorites, he came to Atlanta. How does he look? How does Giannis look? How do these guys feel in person?
They break your mind in person. They're so big. It's just hard for your mind to wrap itself around that. Like these guys are so big, so athletic, and move so well. And, they're great, but, Onyeka Okongwu's got an answer for
that was where I was going to go. I was like, how Double O has been better and better as the season's progressed.
Exactly. That's what I love about Double O. And then, I'm a guard guy, I really like Tyler Hero. That's who I wish. Why can't Kevin Huerter be Tyler Hero? Is that a realistic, or am I being unfair? Because they're both drafted mid to late first round, just a year apart. Is that unfair? Like Kevin Huerter's not ever going to reach Tyler Hero levels, or am I tripping?
I think okay. I mean this because Kevin, I know you're listening, so I don't want to be offensive.
Let's not hurt his feelings.
Your boy Pat's here. I know you're listening. You and us are the good friends. You're on first name basis. I know this. But I think Kevin Huerter. You know the cool thing about Kevin is that the difference between him and Tyler Hero is why Kevin doesn't get the criticism that Tyler will. Right? When Tyler wasn't as good last season, it was viewed as a significant negative because he's meant to be something great. Kevin can do what he did against Philly in Game 6. And then he can also kind of take a back seat to the Trae Youngs and the the Hunters and the Capellas and the Double O's and the Bogies and the Gallows and the JC, right? We have quite a deep team here in Atlanta. Unfortunately, that's not played out the best. But the idea with Huerter is I don't know how well a Hero would fit next to a Trae the same way a Kevin does unquestionably fit quite well next to a Trae. But the beauty is Kevin's also quite young. He can definitely get better. I don't know about Tyler Hero, but for him, I want to see defensive consistency. He's what 6'6", 6'7". He's quite a large person. Kevin Huerter is, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like I want to see defensive consistency because you can see in moments it's there. It's definitely there, but the consistency isn't. And I think that's one of the biggest things of his game that can go up a level. We know you can shoot. You're a great shooter. We know you can score. We know you can pass. You're actually a pretty good playmaker. The defense needs to be the next level with Kevin. And he's what, 22 years old, 23 years old, if I'm not mistaken?
23, yeah. Yeah,
He's got time to be a really good defender. I hope that the coaching staff is looking at him and they know infinitely more than I do. So don't listen to me if I'm wrong, coach. I'm sorry.
Same. Yeah.
But yeah, like defense is what I want to see from him because I know he can play offense. He did it against Philly and he sent him home.
Agreed.
Which is really, really cool.
And with someone like Trae Young, you don't necessarily need like that, just pure offensive efficiency. You need to be able to shoot, be able to space the floor, be efficient. But with someone like Trae Young, who's not the best defensively, I think we can all agree to that. Having someone
lockdown defender. That is lockdown defender Trae Young.
I pray to God we can clip that in like 3 years and show that to the world. Like we called this year. Yeah. I would love to see that. But like you said, as long as he can be, he doesn't have, Kevin Huerter does not have to reach that Tyler Hero level of offense and offensive ability. But even if he can get to 70% of that, but really up his defensive game, I think his future in Atlanta will be really bright and the team can go a lot further with Kevin playing that way.
Okay. I like it. I hope you're right.
I hope so too. Kevin, if you're listening, tell us what you're thinking about your game, man. Cause I know that look, that contract was mighty nice. I have to say, quite nice. Talk to me a little bit about the Eastern Conference because it is deeper than I think many years past. And if we look at the Eastern Conference now, the likes of Brooklyn at 8, Charlotte 9, Atlanta 10, Washington at 1 point, top in the East at now 11, New York at 12. All those teams have some form of playoff aspiration, are pretty much outside looking in conversation here, or potentially could be. What do you think? What do you think the favorites are in the East? If you had to pick the Eastern Conference Finals today, and let's assume that your employer and the Atlanta Hawks are not listening to this part of the conversation, who do you think are the favorites to go to the Eastern Conference Finals as it stands right now?
Y'all are going to think I'm crazy with these two teams, and maybe so, but I'm going to go with the Miami Heat and the Brooklyn Nets.
Talk to me about why.
Miami Heat, like, they got my attention this offseason. Like, they totally reloaded. They had that slump after the bubble, injuries and everything else, totally revamped their roster. And if Kyle Lowry and if they can, they stay healthy, I think they've got the perfect mix of young talent, leadership, and they're just so nasty and so surly. I really think that they're going to be the favorite coming out of the East, one of the favorites coming out of the East. And then the Brooklyn Nets, just because they have Kevin Durant, and eventually they're going to have Kyrie and Ben Simmons as well. The New York City mandate just got lifted, and then Ben Simmons, I know he's dealing with a back issue right now. I think they're very dangerous. So I'm going to go with those two teams.
Those are both very solid picks. I mean, with Miami, and we on the podcast, we had an episode where we were doing our predictions for awards, and I wasn't on the podcast for this specific episode, but my pick for Coach of the Year was Eric Spoelstra, the Miami Heat head coach. And the reason why is this entire season, Miami has missed their stars. They have not played consistently. Jimmy Butler was out with injury. Bam Adebayo missed a lot of games with injury. Kyle Lowry with injuries and some personal reasons as well. They all missed games. Their three best players did not play together, yet they're the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. So you can imagine what they can do with all three of those guys healthy, with the roster they have and the coaching that they have. They could legitimately make another run, and it's it would not. No, I wouldn't shock me, and I don't think it would shock any other people. With Brooklyn, the interesting thing with that vaccine mandate. So I saw that they did lift it, but apparently there's a clause where there's a private sector mandate that applies to Barclays Center, where Kyrie still cannot play.
Oh, really?
But he can spectate now, like that.
Okay, great.
Come watch him.
What?
He can burn some sage.
This is news to me. What, Shams? What the hell's going on?
Yeah,
you said he could play.
Yeah, I wanna do some research. I don't quote me here. That's something that I saw. So definitely needs to be some research done there. Okay. But it would be a very interesting wrinkle if there's still another step of Kyrie sitting out and not being able to join the team fully yet.
That would be ridiculous.
Interesting.
That would be ridiculous.
Breaking news to me, man.
Right?
I just saw the Shams tweet. I was like, all right, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, look, if he tweets it, it must be true. It's that simple,
gospel.
in my opinion. Also, before we move to the West, James Harden in Philly. I know Asad is ecstatic about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Listener, if you've made it this far, Asad thinks they're going to the finals, supposedly. Which I think is just asinine, but that's besides the point. They've looked good in the first couple games, I will say that. But what are your thoughts on that? Do you think the ceiling is a finals appearance in this NBA season, obviously? And then what have you seen from them so far in the 2 games they've played?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think they look great, and I like that they were so aggressive. They know that they've got a finite window with Joel Embiid playing at this level, so they're going to move mountains to put the right team and keep trying. I mean, they're trying everything. They've had Jimmy Butler, they've had Ben Simmons. They're trying now James Harden. They've tried everything, and they're going to try to find the right pieces to make it work. So I really applaud their effort. And I think, yeah, they could totally make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, if not win it.
So here's a funny little tidbit. I assume you're familiar with Bill Simmons.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Of course, right. I'm a big Bill Simmons fan, listener. You've heard me talk about Bill Simmons so many times. So he had a podcast out earlier this week. I believe it dropped on Wednesday of this week. And he spoke about obviously he's got connects and God knows what where in the NBA. And he spoke about how before the Harden trade was made, there were actually 2 camps in Philly. There was the Daryl Morey camp, who obviously wanted his son and beloved lover, James Harden. And then there was the Joel Embiid camp, surprisingly, who wanted Bradley Beal instead of James Harden.
Yeah.
And it only fell through after Bradley Beal decided that he was going to be out for the remainder of the NBA season getting wrist surgery. Did you hear anything about the Atlanta Hawks at the deadline or anything about this deal at all that did happen or obviously didn't happen, but could have happened that would have been just as shocking?
I think really remember the Hawks were in pretty serious negotiations for Ben Simmons. And I think they even entertained the thought of Tobias Harris in that albatross of the contract. So they were pretty serious about that. But when the James Harden news broke and they realized that Philadelphia would provide the better package, that in kind of a weird way is what got them off the trade talk. So that's kind of how they were affected by that. And then the only other spicy trade gossip I saw was I like the idea of Kevin Huerter and Cam Reddish for Marcus Smart. I think Marcus Smart would be great for the Hawks. But really, I think the James Harden drama is really what broke the possible Ben Simmons to Atlanta possibilities.
I'm not too bad about it, honestly. I think that the idea of making a move was nice in theory, but as long as we can do a good job, and when I mean by we, I mean really the team does a really good job managing expectations and understanding that the window is far from closed for this Atlanta Hawks team. Let's be smart. Let's be patient. By the way, I have a follow-up for you. Woj, our buddy Woj said, the New York City Mayor's interpretation announcement, Kyrie Irving remains restricted from playing under the New York City mandate for larger employers. So you are right. But the March 7th loosening of the Key to NYC mandate is what will allow Kyrie to play. So between now and March 7th, not going to be playing, probably attending home games, like you said. But they said if the numbers don't go crazy between now and March 7th, they'll open it up more. And that will likely is what will allow
that entertainment venue, and that will allow Kyrie to play.
All right, we'll talk to Pat about the Western Conference. We've done East.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, we've talked Lakers, Rockets. Rockets don't really have a chance of winning the West. The Lakers, I mean, chances are low, but we never count out LeBron.
3% better than the Rockets at this point. I don't know.
Right.
Who fucking cares?
But we've seen, I think 2 very dominant contenders in the Phoenix Suns and then the Golden State Warriors. But then you've got the young Memphis Grizzlies who've really surged this year that, are showing their potential to take over the West one day. You've got some playoff staples that have been there in the Utah Jazz, the Dallas Mavericks, the Denver Nuggets. What are your thoughts on the West? Who do you like coming out of the West? What are some things that you expect to see? And what's your Western Conference Finals prediction?
Yeah, man, it's totally wide open, especially with Chris Paul. Yeah, he's going to be out for a while. So that's a great question. I like the Memphis Grizzlies. I feel like they're not quite there yet. Maybe they could pull an Atlanta Hawks, like last year and make it to the conference finals. But right now I got to stick with the chalk and go with the Golden State Warriors would be my team coming out. And then just to keep it spicy, keep it fun, let's say Golden State Memphis in the Western Conference Finals. Golden State emerging. It would be. That would be cool. It would
be good basketball. I got no problem. But Pat, you're obviously wrong. It's obviously the Los Angeles Lakers who are going to win.
You're right. I'm tripping.
Obviously, come on. It's going to be the Lakers and the Hawks, and you're going to get to go to both cities and attend all 7 games. It's going to be sick. I mean, that's a dream come true, is it not?
You speak it into existence. I love it.
And then just before we move on, the NBA champion this year, in your estimation, will be.
Oh man, it's gonna sound crazy. I'm gonna go Brooklyn Nets.
Wow,
Okay.
that would be a hell of a story, would it not?
I think it would also break the regular season of the NBA. I think it
I
would.
think you're right. They almost did last year, right? They almost proved us wrong last year when they said
they were Kevin Durant's foot like an inch away
I
from.
mean, yeah, if he was one shoe size smaller, then that might have been the entire story different. And we could be talking about Giannis differently now too. Who knows?
It would change everything, and I think it will have a big referendum on the regular season when you can see, hey, they were without their whole team for the regular season. They limped into the play-in game, and then they were healthy. Ben Simmons, by that time will have maybe played a few games. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Brooklyn Nets. That's my hot take for tonight.
Okay. One last kind of question before we move on to the kind of the final part of this. There's some unhappy stars in the West. So just curious to see that what you both of you think about this, but which of these players do you expect to request a trade first? Donovan Mitchell, Zion Williamson, or Damian Lillard?
Let me think about that one. Zion's got a contract extension coming up, right? He would
potentially as early as this summer.
That's what I was thinking. He'd be the first player ever to decline that.
If he did. So I'm going to say no to Zion. I think it'd be insane. I think it would be insane if Zion turned that down, by the way. We're talking like $200 million almost.
The super max extension, right?
Is he eligible for the super? He has not gotten all NBA or all. Oh, he did get all-star, did he not?
Yeah, he got all-star.
Well, then, yeah, he should be eligible for the Trae Young contract, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's gonna be like 5 years, 207-ish million.
Yeah,
something like that.
And
yeah,
then
a lot of money.
I don't know. I think we're looking at another disappointing playoff exit for the Utah Jazz. So I'll go Donovan Mitchell.
Okay.
So maybe like Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young pair up here in Atlanta. Maybe. What's funny is, funny enough, I was scrolling the Hawks Reddit before we hopped on the call today, and
a
lot of people,
they're
talking about Donovan Mitchell, and I'm like, look, from an offensive standpoint, that would be ridiculous. We'd have no defense whatsoever. I'm not mad about it. The basketball would be super duper fun. Geez, imagine if that would ever happen. I think Trae would love it because like the mentality of those two guys is very similar. They're clearly hard workers. They clearly don't give a shit at all. Which is really, I mean, look, these guys are incredible basketball players. What are we talking about?
Exactly.
I want to talk about the book that you've written, but just before, let's do MVP. Do you think it's Joel? Do you think it's Jokic, Giannis, or other?
I'll go either Joel or Jokic. I'll go one of those two. I saw where it was Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson. I forgot who. Somebody got flamed a few weeks ago on Twitter because they were like, "Here's my MVP," and there's no Joker on there. So
funny enough, the ESPN they do like a straw poll every year around this time, and the guy who does it, man, I think it's Tim McMahon does it, and he gets back all the results. And the majority of the people who vote in the straw poll actually vote for they have real MVP votes.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And 3 dudes. So Embiid won by 5 total points, which is like nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
And 3 responses came back without Jokic in the top 5.
It's ridiculous.
Wow.
Which is
blasphemy.
You should lose your vote.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be allowed to vote when you make such absurdities.
People aren't watching those games.
I guess not. Like, how do you say whatever? Anyway, let's talk about your book. Tell me. So first, give the listeners some insight, right? Yeah. Tell them, let's go title the book, when you wrote it, and more importantly, why you wrote it.
Yeah. So I'm going to try to make this as not sad as possible because it's so easy to kind of like get, end on a down note. So we're going to end on a celebratory note.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically 2020 sucked for everybody. I kind of described my motivations in the first few pages. Lose my day job, lose my side hustle. I got nothing but time on my hands. I wanted to pay tribute to my favorite player, Kobe Bryant. And so I spent most of 2020 interviewing different people who knew him, who worked with him, experts, and just tried to get as much insight as possible and to try to document this as much as possible. And yeah, I think it's a solid little book. The only thing I'm disappointed is I wasn't able to get the copyright images. Like it would have cost like tens of thousands of dollars to get that legally. So you got to have your phone out. You got to Google stuff while you're looking it up. But other than that, everything else about it is sound. And all the proceeds have been donated to various charities.
Oh, very
So
cool.
yeah. I didn't want to profit off somebody's early, passing. So yeah, I mean, if you're a Kobe fan, if you're a sneakerhead, I think you'll enjoy it. And if you like my kind of weird writing, I think you'll like it as well.
So the cool thing is, Pat, this is the first time you and I are ever actually talking,
Yeah,
besides like Twitter DMs. I read the book, obviously, before we kind of come into this episode here today, and it really did feel like just another person writing,
yeah,
and writing in almost like a little bit more formal than like a
yeah,
text message format or like a
yeah,
letter format. It felt
exactly.
very natural. I felt like I did get to know you quite well,
Uh,
throughout the book, which was, I thought, really, really cool. And I value when you're reading a book like that, that's about history, but it's also history from multiple perspectives and expert accounts.
yeah,
I almost want it to feel like I'm watching you do the whole experience. I want to feel
really.
like you remember we watched The Last Dance around
Yeah,
April or March of
yeah,
2020, right?
yeah,
And we sat there and we heard from Jordan. And then we
mhm,
heard from a bunch of his teammates. But we were there. We were literally
mhm,
sitting and watching these people speak, and it felt very narration-y, and I really enjoyed that part of it. It didn't feel like I was reading just any old book. It felt very natural to me. And listener, I promise you, I wouldn't lie to Pat. I mean this genuinely. If I didn't like the book, we just wouldn't talk about it. I'd be like, Pat,
yeah,
tell me a little bit about the book and let's just fucking call it. Just promote your thing and let's move on. But no, I really enjoyed the book. But one of my favorite parts of the book was actually in the beginning, where you
yeah,
talked about the draft day or the draft pick Kobe's.
yeah.
Talk a little bit about why is that the shoe that kind of started it for you? What was the little story there? Obviously, I read a little bit about it, but I'm sure there's not as much you included in the pages that you probably have in the back of your mind. Why
Oh
is
yeah.
that shoe sticking out to you? And then tell the listener a little bit about the shoe so they can kind of see what's going on here.
Well, first, thank you for the kind words. That means so much to me. And then second, yeah, so I was never really like a sneakerhead until like Kobe's final season. And Nike was just cranking out the Kobe
Yeah.
11s, like so many different colorways. And I forgot, I guess he wore a pair. I was looking online. I was looking online and I was like, man, I got to get that. And it was the white and teal and purple Charlotte Hornets draft day colorway. And, it had like the draft date on it and like the
The
Charlotte
wrong
Hornets
date.
color. Yeah, exactly. And that was the
The
thing, it
wrong
was the
date.
wrong day. And that's why I loved it. And then there's this whole backstory about how previously the Kobe 4 had the wrong dates. And I just love the whole story. I love the color teal. I'm a 90s kid, so like I love teal and purple. So yeah, I mean, I was at my day job at the time, no real sports writing, and I just spent all day on sneaker news. I just kept looking at the stock photos of this shoe, and I was like, man, when this drops, I'm getting it. And like $160 is no
That's a lot.
small.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a lot.
exactly. So finally, like it came to my mall. It was that day. I had my check. Like my check was deposited, direct deposit that night. I had my debit card, and I was like lined up outside the mall at like 10:01 a.m. And it was just one of those things where like, hey, you want to try them on? No, I'm good. It's like, do you want to replace insoles? Nope, I'm good. He's like, are you going to wear these? I'm like, I'm not sure. I have no
Did
idea.
you ever end up wearing them?
Oh, all the time. I've worn
Okay,
those
good,
more than
good,
anything.
very
I
cool.
proposed to my fiance wearing them.
Oh,
So
very good. That's
Wow.
really cool, actually.
Awesome.
That's well,
yeah.
congratulations, obviously, but that's really cool.
Thank you.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, without a doubt, my favorite. And then like after that, buying shoes, it's an
It's a
addiction.
drug.
It's like
It's a
boom, boom,
drug.
boom, boom. Like I bought like four more colorways, the Kobe 11, like in a month. I was like, whoa, bro, like you've got to calm down. So luckily I've gotten somewhat of a grip on it. Like you mentioned earlier, like I got some of the Pro Tros. I was lucky enough to get my hands on some of those. Man, hopefully Nike comes to their senses and they work out a deal with Vanessa Bryant and they're able to get those back in the hands of consumers because
It would be a
well,
travesty if they didn't figure this out.
it really
Yeah.
it already is. And man,
Eventually, like right now, it's a big resellers game, and
yeah,
eventually, hopefully, it will change the narrative, and it'll get into the hands of those that value it, um, as like almost like a ritual, right? Like
absolutely.
I have a friend of mine who he only exclusively for the last, I don't know, 10 years plays basketball in Kobe's.
That's dope.
And I mean, it doesn't matter which kind he's putting them on, right? It doesn't matter how valuable or expensive. He's playing in the Grinches right now, which are like almost $1,000 shoes on StockX, the most recent ones that came out in like November, December. And while I have a pair, thankfully I hit on a pair on sneakers, which is a miracle in itself. They haven't left a box. I haven't put them on because I just can't mentally do it. I want to wear them, but I can't. And he's playing basketball full court at like the LA Fitness with him. Which by the way, I value. I actually think that's better than what I'm doing. He's doing what he's doing what Kobe would have wanted with his shoes. I can't seem to do that. But I wanted to understand, you wrote a book about the sneaker history and journey of Kobe. Why Kobe? The argument could be said that LeBron James or Michael Jordan have more interesting, intriguing sneaker careers, right? And sneaker stories. Why Kobe, besides obviously the fact that you love Kobe Bryant, which we know, but what made his sneaker journey unique?
Yeah, when he changed the game and the sneaker game so many times. He was the first high school kid to get a sneaker deal. He was the first real sneaker free agent, like on a grand scheme. First player to go really with the low cuts, and then he's the first player to start doing the pro tour. Like, he revolutionized basketball sneakers about 4 times over. So all my personal feelings aside, he really there's Michael Jordan, of course, the GOAT in basketball and the GOAT in sneakers, and then there's Kobe Bryant, who's number 2 in my book in both those categories. And he just changed the game so much. And there's a reason why so many NBA players are still wearing those Kobe's. And, every single game I'll go down to Atlanta and I check out, I see what they got on feet, and they're all wearing, like your buddy, they're all wearing Kobe's. And, ESPN had a really cool article about a month or 2 ago about the great lengths to which players are going now to try to find Kobe's, which was a really cool article. And
John Moran is in that article talking about, well, I've been buying mine, so I'm not looking for any pairs anymore, which I thought was, really cool, right? John Moran, brand new to the NBA, brand new to NBA money as well. But like, no, Kobe shoes have been something that he's been collecting and playing in. Obviously, the GOAT, PJ Tucker, has.
Oh, yeah.
He probably has pairs Kobe never wore, if we're being blatantly honest with one another, which would not shock me at all.
Oh man, I don't see how he does it. And then number 2, DeMar DeRozan. He obviously was LA guy. He was so a big time friend and follower of Kobe. And man, both those guys, the colorways they break out, man, it's crazy. It's so exciting to see, and it's cool. It's just a little tribute. It also speaks to how ahead of the game he was. That, like, for example, the Kobe 6 Pro Tour, which so many of those guys are wearing, came out in 2011. That technology still holds up, still exceeds what's on the shelves today, and it's just a cool little tribute. I love it.
Is there a favorite colorway for you that's come out in the last 18, 24 months or so that you're just like, yeah, I wish I had those, or maybe you do have them?
General release, if you even want to call it that, like you said, the Kobe 6 Grinch. Like, I wish I couldn't have gotten it.
Man. General release. Well, Pat, you wrote in the book, you're a size 13, my guy.
Yeah, I'm competing. I'm out here competing against NBA guys. For
sure. Well, you're not competing against. I'm a 10. You're on another level, bro. You're 13.
Yeah. So I'm out here competing against like NBA shooting guards. And they got way deeper pockets than I do. So I would say general release Kobe 6, and then y'all gotta go back and look. Anthony Davis had a pair of Kobe 6 PEs in the Minneapolis blue and gold colorway. Also, I'm a UCLA Bruins guy, so those were crazy. I have pictures of those saved in my phone, and it's one of those things where, like, hopefully years down the road, like Kobe Bryant's estate, Nike, they're able to figure it out. I'm able to get some of these pairs because, man, like, I don't know, they just light something in my mind on fire. I can't even articulate it.
Do you remember in the 2020 finals when the Lakers won? I believe it was game 5 or game 6. Anthony Davis wore the all gold, like
those were crazy.
Bro, what? Those never came out. Those are like a pair that is reserved for very few. And I thought, like, I think correct me, we lost that game. I think that was one of the games we lost in that series, which kind of like sucked because he brought him out as like a coronation moment for himself and for the Lakers to now return to greatness. And we actually lost that game, which was a bit unfortunate.
Game
but man,
6.
those were ridiculous colors.
Though, yeah, I thought it was an omen. It was a Friday night. It was gold. I thought it was just like happening. And then the game 6, he wore a Chicago colorway. It was red, white, and black. And those were dope. But yeah, the gold, I thought those took it to a new level. And man, some of these PEs these guys are getting, they got to share the love, man. Nike,
really Nike got to figure something out. Nike has to figure something out. One of my favorites that came out in the last couple years or so was they did a collaboration with Undefeated in that 2 Kobe 6-pack, right? So they had the Kobe draft days, are similar to ones you've talked about, all white with a little bit of teal and then a gold swoosh. And then the second one was actually more of my favorite. I forget the name. I think it was
like gold and like red and purple.
No. They were the patchwork ones with the colors of every team that didn't draft him that came in that pack. And those were just ridiculous, like ridiculous. I loved it. Again, my buddy, he plays basketball in those, which hurts my soul, but also like you're supposed to do that. I just can't wrap my head around.
Does he wear a size 13? Because I might be waiting for him.
I think he's like an 11 and a half. I could totally double stock it if he's down. I'm gonna call and be like, hey, let me just wear them.
Let's meet outside.
Let's meet outside. Let's go. You want to? No, I was gonna say, hey, you want a one-on-one for him? He'd kick my ass. He'd absolutely destroy me. Don't worry.
Same. I'm out of shape.
I'm very mediocre LA Fitness basketball level. But you don't have to be good at the game to love the game. That's why we call ourselves the Water Boy and Equipment Manager Podcast. We are all water boys. We are all equipment managers. That's what we are. That's what we do. Talk to me a little bit about your favorite Kobe Bryant moment in his career while you're a fan. What was like, yeah, this is it for me.
It's the airball game in Utah when he was this young guy and he's coming out and just fearless, he's going to keep shooting. And I was a little kid, I didn't really know too much about basketball, but my dad said, hey, you see that guy right there who just kind of humiliated himself? He's about to be better than Michael Jordan one day. He's
really, your dad called it that early.
My dad called, it was the hottest it takes. It was scorching hot take. And I was like, all right, you got my attention. And, as Kobe grew, I grew up too. And yeah, man, I just like that fearlessness. I show me somebody who keeps getting up from failure. And I think that's so much more inspiring than somebody who's on top. And to me, it's the airball game. I love it.
Wow. That's something I've not heard before, for what it's worth. That's a very unique answer, and I value that. I've heard, obviously, the 5th ring is a really big deal for a lot of people.
Beautiful moment.
Which is like huge for Kobe's legacy.
81 points.
81 points is obviously a great moment. The shot against Phoenix, or the 2 shots against Phoenix, if we're being honest with one another in the playoffs, tons and tons of moments. You talked a lot about the Kobe 11 being one of your first introductions to Kobe shoes for yourself, the Kobe 6 Protros. What's your actual favorite sneaker number of Kobe's, or if there's a colorway that specifically is your favorite, but like, is there a number that you're like, yeah, this is the one that I can't walk away from if they were to come back out?
I want the Kobe 9 Elites, like the high tops.
Okay. Yes.
Specifically the Easter colorway. So there's this one guy who covers the Hawks as well for a local site. And I saw him, he broke them out on January 26th. And I stopped. I was like, hey man, where'd you get those? When did you get those? And I was just like reading them to write. So I was like, I got to know all the facts. And they were clean too. So I really like the high tops because I thought those were just crazy. Well, what about y'all? I want to hear y'all's answer.
So do you have an answer for this one? Is there a Kobe that sticks out to you, bro?
Not, to be honest, not really. I'm not much of a sneakerhead. I know very little.
So there's like strictly Nike running shoes for comfort and control, which I value, by the way. Those are
like that.
Efficiency guy. But no, there's I've seen a lot of these kind of shoes kind of over the years. Some of you guys have mentioned it on social medias and things. And sneaker culture just overall is very fascinating to me. Of like how there's the intricacies, like every small different color, different details, the way the swoosh is, maybe the location of it. It's all really, really cool stuff. I've never really gotten into it, but I definitely understand the appeal of it. And it shows how much you guys value it and love it.
You saved a lot of money, my friend.
Oh yeah, you definitely have saved more money than Pat and I. My favorite is actually the Kobe. So growing up, I did not understand sneaker culture for the longest time. And it was like around middle school for me when I started to understand it.
Yeah.
And then it was like a whole nother thing to try to explain to my dad that paying $100+ for a pair of shoes was totally normal and acceptable,
Yeah.
which it was not at all.
Mhm.
But my dad was like, cool, we'll do like, you know, a pair ever
Mhm.
so often that you got to be cool with, you got to be nice to,
Yeah.
but we'll do that, you know. And it was really awesome of my parents both to be like, yeah, you could totally have this nice thing. But yeah, so my first ever pair of Kobe's was the Kobe 3 white black. So listener, for
Nice.
you, Google him if you can. That's my personal favorite pair of Kobe's of all time, because they were the first ones. They were like a present, a gift to me, a first of, you know, something that I didn't have before. They were also very comfortable, and I played with them until the soles fell off. I literally played with them until the soles fell off. And now I wish that I didn't. But at the time, it was totally the right thing to do. They were Kobe's. They're meant to be played basketball in. But listener, if you can, Google them. They're all white. And the midsole is just like a black. And the swoosh on the back is a black swoosh. My favorite Kobe of all time. I love it to death.
Super slept on. And it's a rare one-off that doesn't look like the shoe before it or the shoe after it. And I'm pretty sure it was heavily inspired by Natalia. And like her middle name was like, I'm not good with like Italian.
Okay, I'm not Italian. I'm not gonna connect. I'm not gonna.
Oh, okay, yeah. But it's got like the diamonds, like and kind of like they're like waffle diamond sort of
Yeah.
And also there's like this commercial too, where it's like he's like talking about Beethoven and stuff in his shoes, and that's Kobe, just like playing at a different level. So.
Yeah, can you be this different animal in the same beast at the same time? You're welcome. That's Kobe. Of course it was.
Oh, that's another thing. The commercials, man.
Of course.
Just crush the commercials.
Yeah, the Kobe systems were really good, those commercials. And then the Kobe LeBron puppets around that 2008, 9-ish time when we were deprived of them being against each other in the finals. And I know we were.
That's right. That's right.
But yeah, the Kobe 3 sticks out to me. The Kobe 5 is another shoe that I really, really, really enjoyed. And then funny enough, I tore my ACL. I've torn both of my ACLs over my lifetime. And so like when he started to put the 3 lines on the back for the Achilles, that shoe meant more to me, not because I tore my Achilles, thankfully, knock on wood, hopefully I never will. But it was Kobe's acknowledgement of his mortality and his ability to grow past that mortality to achieve greatness. And so for me, it was just a constant reminder. It's like, hey, you know, shit happens in life, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, whatever. Work. Believe in yourself, because only you can change that reality. And he did. And he gave us a beautiful 60-point performance in a time where his legs were completely done, right? On the way out to tell us, hey, by the way, I could totally still do this if I wanted to on a given night.
That's so dope. I'm glad you like that stitching too. Like that really is such a cool little wink.
I think the coolest thing about Kobe's over the years, and you're right that he revolutionized the sneaker game. Another thing he did was he included slight details in his shoes over the years that eventually Kevin Durant picked up in his shoes. Now he does it a lot. There's a lot of different little details to his childhood and his career, and Kyrie does it too. And now LeBron does it too. And Giannis probably does it as well. It's like he kind of started the little detailing of certain things. And I think Kobe, like many things, he stole that from Michael Jordan, right? With Michael Jordan 10 on the bottom, he had every accomplishment possible on the bottom of that shoe. And among other shoes, he stole it from Jordan, which is totally fine. But he took it to another level. He's like, hey, I'm going to have the 3 lines on the back, or I'm going to have my little signature on the inside. There's going to be little pieces of me in this shoe, so that when you wear it, it's not just a shoe. Now it's a piece of you that has a piece of me. And Kobe did exactly that in his career. He gave everything he could to us.
That's why we're always going to have Kobe in our heart. I mean, let's just say he's just ingrained.
Yeah, I think so too. The next time we do a Kobe pod, Pat, we'll have to have you on, of course.
Please do, man.
Of course we will. Of course we will. Thank you, Pat, so much. Pat, again, Pat Benson of Sports Illustrated magazine joining us today. Is it magazine or is it website? You're more a website writer.
I'm on the website. One day, maybe the magazine.
Maybe the magazine. Are they still sending out magazines?
I think you can subscribe.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, Pat, before we get out of here, can you tell the listener where to find you on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever they can get Pat news?
Yeah, just hit me up on social media at Pat_Benson_Jr. If I could redo it, I would make it much shorter. I apologize.
You totally can. You can.
Well, I'll lose the blue check mark if I change
Oh, see that's a good problem to have, Pat. Us and I don't have blue check marks just yet, so
that's a good problem. Or if I keep harassing like certain people like online, they're going to take it one or the other. So, but yeah, just follow me on there, and then go to allhawks.com. That's like the quickest way to get the Sports Illustrated's Atlanta Hawks section. And my guys, thank you so much. I've been on like a lot of podcasts, a lot of radio shows. This has been the most fun one.
Oh. That means the world.
We're honored. Yeah, we're
that
honored.
That means the world. Truly.
No, man. I've listened to y'all. Y'all have such a good chemistry, and y'all just gel. And thank you so much for having me. This is a blast.
Thanks for coming on, Pat. Again, Pat Benson, Atlanta Hawks. We are the Waterboy and Equipment Manager podcast at WBEMPOD. That's Web and Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and the Waterboy and Equipment Manager podcast on YouTube, where you could be watching us right now. Also, any last words before we get out of here, man?
No, I just want to kind of bounce off what you said, Pat. Thanks for jumping on, and this was a great podcast. Definitely one of our favorites. We kind of covered a lot of things, but it was everything that we talked about was really fun, and I definitely learned a lot. Both obviously from Hawks related and Kobe related things. So definitely a pleasure. Would love to have you back whenever you get a chance. And just thanks for being on.
Thank you, my friend.
Listener, thank you for listening to another episode of the Waterboy and Equipment Manager podcast. We'll see you next week. Be good in the meantime. See ya.
Bye.